Hey, how you doing today, folks? In today's video, I'm going to continue my recap of the Game of Thrones series. We are currently on Season 1, Episode 4, so let's get things started right away. Episode 4 starts us off in the middle of Bran having a dream. And in that dream, he is using his legs again and shooting his bow and arrow. And that's when the three-eyed raven gets his attention as he flies by and lands on the head of the direwolf statue. And Bran walks up to the three-eyed raven to basically check it out. And that's when Bran suddenly wakes up a little bit startled. Now I know if I lost the use of my legs, I'd probably be dreaming about using them again too. I feel bad for Bran. It'd be bad enough to lose the ability to walk, but to lose the ability to walk at such a young age would be even worse. To go pretty much your entire life handicapped would really suck. That's pretty unfortunate for Bran. And then Theon walks in and tells Bran that they have visitors, so he must get out of bed. Then we see Hodor, and this is the beginning of Hodor's job as being Bran's taxicab service. We then see that the visitor is actually Tyrion Lannister, fresh back from the wall. But Robb isn't too happy to see him. It's not like they were friends in the first place, but now that the Lannisters are under investigation by House Stark for paralyzing Bran, Tyrion isn't going to be getting any more warm welcomes by the Starks, even if he had nothing to do with it. Bran and Hodor then burst in, and even though Tyrion got word that Bran was awake, he is still a little bit surprised to see him awake and doing well. He asks Bran if he remembers anything from the fall, which Bran doesn't, but Tyrion is still very curious to find out what happened. Tyrion probably has some suspicions of his own. Tyrion then gives Bran a blueprint for making a saddle that would allow Bran to ride a horse, even with his disability. Robb is a little bit suspicious of this, and asks him if this is some kind of trick, because there's no way that a Lannister would go out of their way to do something nice for the Starks. Robb probably assumes that Tyrion is just a piece of shit like his brother Jaime. But Tyrion tells Robb that he has a soft spot for bastards, cripples, and broken things. And Bran gives Tyrion a little smile, and he gives him a little smile back. But Robb still isn't too impressed. But he still offers him a place to stay at Winterfell nonetheless. But Tyrion declines anyway. He knows Robb doesn't really mean it, so he would much rather stay in a brothel than at the Stark's castle. Especially when he knows he's not welcome there. So, as Tyrion goes to leave, him and Theon actually exchange a few words outside. Tyrion is wondering why Lady Catelyn wasn't there to greet him when he arrived at Winterfell, which Theon lies and says that she isn't feeling too well, that's why she wasn't here. But Tyrion knows she isn't there at all. So he then questions why Theon is so loyal to his captors, and he wonders what Theon's father, Balon Greyjoy, would think about his son now, if he could see him. Deep down, I think Tyrion might be thinking, the imp might be right, what the hell am I doing here? Then we go to Castle Black, where Jon is still taking on a bit of a leadership role and helping train the other men. Then walks in Samwell Tarly of Hornhill, who is there to take the Black, and no one is impressed. And Thorne immediately puts him to work and tests his skills. And we quickly find out that Sam cannot fight. He may have never held a sword in his entire life by the looks of it. Sam gets his ass kicked pretty good here, and you can tell Jon doesn't like it. It's one thing to beat someone who isn't trained as well as the others, but it's just wrong to beat up a man who isn't even trying to defend himself. And this pisses Jon off, and Jon makes everybody stop. But it doesn't make Thorne too happy, so he tells Jon, alright, if you want to protect him, then go ahead and protect him. But I'm going to put everyone up against you to get through you to him. But of course, Jon kicks everyone's ass, which pisses Thorne off even more. We then cut across the sea to Dany and Jorah, as they continue to march with the Dothraki, only this time they have arrived at Vas Dothrak, the city of the Horse Lords. And Viserys thinks the place is a pile of shit, but Dany reminds him these are her people now. But Viserys obviously didn't get the point when he had the whip wrapped around his throat and was threatened to be killed. He still says these are his people, and this is his army, and Khal Drogo is marching the wrong way. And of course, no one says a word. No one is taking him seriously, not even Daenerys at this point. He doesn't even realize the situation that he has put himself in. He just isn't getting the point. Dany then asks Jorah if the Dothraki could get back the Seven Kingdoms. But Jorah says they've never crossed the narrow sea. They fear any water that their horses cannot drink. But if they did and King Robert was dumb enough to meet them in open battle, it could probably be done. But Jorah knows Robert is now advised by some wiser men, even Ned Stark, who Jorah has fought beside, and knows that he is good, and probably wouldn't be so foolish. And besides, Ned Stark already wants Jorah's head for selling slaves. And in the next scene, we actually start to learn that the Targaryens and the dragons may have a magical bond between one another. Because not only do they have dragons, but they actually rode them. And the fire from a dragon forged the steel that made the Iron Throne. And we also learn that there may be people out there that can change their face as frequently as someone can change their clothes, which is pretty damn interesting. Next, we see Ned at the small council meeting, where they discuss the tournament and all the trouble that it has been bringing. And after the meeting, Ned stops Maester Pycelle so that he could question him about Jon Arryn and his death. The Maester says that it was sickness that came on pretty quickly that killed him. He also says that the night before, Jon came to see him to ask him about a book. Ned says he would like to read it too. Just like Lady Catelyn in the tower where Bran fell, Ned too likes to do his own investigation work. He probably thinks that this book could be a clue to what led to the sudden death and possibly murder of Jon Arryn. And the book that he was actually reading was the lineages and histories of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms, with descriptions of many high lords, noble ladies, and their children. Ned briefly looks through the book and realizes it might take some digging to figure out what the clue might be. But he asks the Maester if Jon had anything to say to him before he died, which Pycelle says there was one phrase he was repeating: "The seed is strong." So Ned asks Maester Pycelle if he is certain that Jon Arryn died of natural causes, and Pycelle was sure of it. He knows Jon was loved by all, and what sort of man would dare do such a thing? But Ned then replies, "Isn't poison a woman's weapon?" Pycelle says, "Yes, women, cravens, and eunuchs." He says, "Did you know that Lord Varys is a eunuch?" Ned says everybody knows that. Pycelle is wondering how Varys even ended up on the small council. He obviously doesn't like him. And as Ned leaves, this is when he runs into Arya outside, as she is still training, even by herself. She is focused and determined to become a fighter. She asks Ned if Bran is going to come and live with them now that he is awake. But Ned doesn't think so, because he knows that Bran still needs to gain his strength back. And Arya said that Bran wanted to be a Knight of the Kingsguard. But Ned said he's not going to be able to do that now, given his injury. But one day he could be Lord of a Holdfast, or even sit on the King's Council, or he could raise castles like Brandon the Builder. And as I mentioned in yesterday's video, there could be some foreshadowing here after Ned said Bran could be like Brandon the Builder. So just keep that phrase in your back pocket for later. But Arya asks if she could be Lord of a Holdfast. Ned says, "No, you can't, but you are going to marry a High Lord one day and rule his castle, and your sons shall be knights and princes and lords." But Arya says, "No, that's not me." And she goes right back to training by herself. You see, at this point, Arya is starting to become a savage. She's not going to be like Sansa and wear dresses and bake cakes. She's going to wear faces and break necks. Back at Castle Black, Jon is on top of the wall on guard duty. And from here on out, he's going to be on guard duty with Sam. Sam says he can't see that well, and he is afraid of heights. And Jon says to him, "Well, you can't see that well, you can't fight, you're afraid of heights and probably everything else. So what the hell were you thinking joining the Night's Watch? What good are you to us?" And that's when Sam tells him a story that on his 18th name day, his father actually came to him and said, "You're almost a man now, but you're not worthy of my land and title. Tomorrow you're going to take the Black, forsake all claim to your inheritance, and start north. If you do not, we are going to have a hunt. And somewhere in these woods your horse will stumble, and you'll be thrown from your saddle to die." At least that's what he will tell his mother. Nothing would please him more. Yeah, Sam's father is pretty much a dick. Whether he's a great commander or not, it's a pretty messed up thing to say to somebody, especially your son. In the next scene, we go back to King's Landing. Littlefinger mentions to Ned that he knows he's reading some book, and Ned knows that Pycelle must have ran his damn mouth. And Littlefinger is probably wondering if Ned is hot on his trail. So Littlefinger offers to help, but it's only to probably ensure Ned isn't looking too closely at him. And as they walk through the courtyard, Littlefinger points out all the people that may be watching him, even people that are his own. Him, Varys, and the Queen have spies everywhere, and they all want to know what the new hand of the king is up to. They don't need some nobleman from the north coming down here and screwing up any of their schemes. Littlefinger tells Ned that there may be someone at the local armory that may be of interest to him, because this person was definitely of interest to Jon Arryn. But Littlefinger even tells Ned not to trust anyone, even him. He tells Ned, "Distrusting me was the wisest thing you have done since you climbed off of your horse." Ned has no idea what type of games he has now entered himself into. He may be in over his head. Ned then visits the armory himself and learns that Jon Arryn came only to see the boy working in the back, and that boy is Gendry. Gendry tells Ned that Jon Arryn would come in and ask him questions from time to time about his work at first, but then he started asking questions about his mother. So this makes Ned pretty curious, so he starts to ask about her too. But Gendry says that he really doesn't remember much, only that she had yellow hair and would sing to him sometimes when he was young. Cersei. Excuse me. Then it hits Ned, and he tells Gendry to look at him. And as Ned stares into his eyes, it's confirmed, and Ned takes a big swallow as he knows this is the king's son. Holy shit, this is Robert Baratheon's son. Things just got interesting. Back at Castle Black, Jon lets it be known that no one's going to touch Sam again. But of course the rapist says otherwise. But Jon, Ghost, and a few of his other friends pay this guy a visit while he's sleeping, just to remind him, unless you want Ghost to eat your face off, you better leave Sam the hell alone. And the next day during a training exercise, old Rapist is now taking Jon serious, and he doesn't touch Sam. But this pisses Thorne off, and Thorne realizes that Jon is behind this, which pisses him off even more. He already hated Jon, and he can't stand to see someone protect a guy that could end up getting them killed. So Thorne tells them, when you're out there beyond the wall with the sun going down, do you want a man at your back or a sniveling boy? Jon probably realizes he is right. You need fighters out there. It doesn't matter how cool you are in here, but out there, you need someone that can protect themselves, and you. Back across the narrow sea, Viserys is back to acting like a little bitch. He's angry, thinking Dany is trying to give him commands, which she says she was not. She just wanted to invite him to dinner and give him a gift that she had made for him. But he's disgusted by this. He says the food smells like manure, and he isn't wearing any damn Dothraki rags. He then slaps Daenerys across the face and pins her to the ground. But Dany has had enough and hits him back, and tells him the next time he raises a hand to her, it will be the last time that he has hands. She is Khaleesi. He put her in this situation, and she is now making the best of it. And she now has Khal Drogo's baby inside of her. And Viserys has got to accept that he is no longer in control. And he is going to have to manage his anger and frustration, or it is definitely going to get his ass killed. Back at Castle Black, Jon tells Sam about the time he could have lost his virginity to a whore named Ross. She surely gets around, doesn't she? By the end of her story, she will have slept with half of the goddamn characters. Sam asks Jon why he didn't go through with it, though, and Jon reminds him that he is a bastard, and he never met his mother, and Ned never talked about her either. He doesn't even know her name, nor if she is dead or alive. She could be a noblewoman or a whore. Jon's worried he would have got the whore pregnant. Then he would bring another bastard into the world, and being a bastard, he knows that that is no life for a child. Then walks in Thorne, who has a story of his own. A story about the cold, and the time he spent 6 months north of the wall. That was only supposed to be a 2-week mission. They heard Mance Rayder and a group of wildlings were going to attack the Eastwatch. But the wildlings are hard men, and they knew a storm was coming, and they know their country better than anyone, so they hid in their caves and waited for the storm to pass. But the watch got caught out in the open, and the wind was so strong it yanked 100-foot trees straight from the ground, roots and all. And if you took your gloves off to take a piss, you would lose a finger to the frost immediately. And all this happened in darkness. The horses died first. They didn't have enough to feed them or keep them warm. Eating the horses was easy. But later, when we started to fall, that wasn't easy. Thorne says new recruits are going to come soon. And Jon and Sam will be passed off to the Lord Commander for assignment. And they will be called men of the Night's Watch. But they would be fools to believe it. They're boys still. And come winter, they will die. That's a messed up thing to say to somebody. Thorne's a dick. But he's right. He knows Sam and Jon are young, and they got to know what lies beyond the wall and how harsh things can actually get, because winter is coming. And whether you want to hear the truth or not, it's something you definitely want to know. Anyways, back in Vasta Thrak, Jorah tells Dany that her brother Rhaegar was the last dragon. But Dany thinks her brother is the rightful king. But Jorah makes her tell the truth, and rightfully or not, Dany does not want to see him sitting on the Iron Throne. Dany asks Jorah what he wants, and he says home. He wants to go home. Which is why he is still willing to spy on Daenerys. And what he wants right now isn't to see her be queen. And Daenerys says she wants to go home too, and she realizes even if her husband gave Viserys an army, he will never take back the Seven Kingdoms. Then we go back to King's Landing, where everyone is attending the tournament. And this is where Littlefinger introduced himself to Sansa. And he says he is a friend of the family. And Arya asks why they call him Littlefinger. He says when he was just a boy, he was very small. And he comes from a little spit of land called the Fingers, hence the nickname Littlefinger. Then we meet the Mountain, the Hound's older brother, as he is about to start off the jousting tournament against Sir Hugh of the Vale, who was Jon Arryn's squire. And of course the Mountain wins. He puts his jousting stick right through the man's throat. And this is when Littlefinger tells Sansa the story of the Mountain and the Hound. It's a lovely little tale of brotherly love. The Hound was just a pup, 6 years old maybe. And Gregor was just a few years older, who was already a big lad, already getting a bit of a reputation. Some lucky boys are just born with the talent for violence. And one evening, Gregor found his little brother playing with a toy by the fire. Gregor's toy, a wooden knight. Gregor never said a word. He just grabbed his brother by the scruff of his neck and shoved his face into the burning coals. And he held him there while the boy screamed, while his face melted. And Littlefinger says there aren't very many people who know that story. And if the Hound so much as heard Sansa mention it, he's afraid all the knights in King's Landing would not be able to save her. Cersei then pays a visit to Ned and tells him he is missing his tournament. But Ned doesn't give a shit. He says, just because you put my name on it doesn't make it mine. But Cersei hopes what happened on the King's Road can be put behind them now. And she even says that forcing Ned to kill the wolf was a bit extreme. And Cersei wonders what Ned is actually doing there. Ned tells her that he is there to serve the king, obviously. Even if the job sucks, he will do as asked until the king tells him otherwise. And that's when Cersei fires a shot at Ned and says, well, she guesses that makes sense. Ned's brother was trained to lead, and Ned was trained to follow. But Ned comes right back at her and says, yeah, well, I was also trained to kill my enemies. And Cersei says, so was I. Which is obviously a direct threat at Ned. Ned must be wondering what the hell is wrong with these people, and what has he gotten himself into. But it's too late to turn back now. He's on to something here, and his honor will make sure that he sees it through. And the last scene is at a small tavern or inn, where Lady Catelyn and Sir Roderick have stopped to take a break from traveling. And this is when Tyrion walks in, who is looking for a room and supper. And this is where we actually get our first sighting of Bronn, who offers Tyrion his room. So Tyrion tosses him some coin. Tyrion then notices Lady Stark, who isn't too happy to see him. And this is when she stands up and starts looking around the room, and she recognizes several sigils that are faithful to her and her father. And she begins calling out their names and asking them if they are still loyal to her and her family. And I think at this point Tyrion is confused and wondering what the hell is she doing. Lady Catelyn says that Tyrion came into her house as a guest and conspired to murder her 10-year-old son. And she says, in the name of King Robert and the good lord you serve, I call upon you to seize him and help me return him to Winterfell to await the king's justice. And that's when several of the men stand up and put their swords to Tyrion's throat. And this is where the episode ends. Now that's one hell of an ending. Detaining a Lannister while your family has already been beefing with the other Lannisters, one who of which is the Queen. Yeah, things are about to get very, very interesting. We are now in the thick of things. And after this, the Starks and the Lannisters are going to be coming for each other's throats. And the story and show just went to a whole new level of excitement. This episode was fantastic, and it's hard not to immediately start the next one to see where this goes. But, like I said, this episode was fantastic. Characters are now being put into position that is the first step of leading them to where they currently are in the story. And at this point, people are probably starting to realize that Bran may have some type of powers. Or this damn three-eyed bird that keeps showing up must be trying to tell him or show him something. And Robb is now turning into a man and realizing that he may have to start making some important decisions or judgment calls on his own. And he may have to start doing this for quite some time now. And even though Tyrion didn't have anything to do with Bran's injury, it was nice to see Robb give a Lannister some resistance, even if he is the Queen's brother. And even though Tyrion is part of a bad family, and he has some vices of his own, deep down you can tell that he has a good heart with good intentions. And I think Tyrion planted the seed in Theon's mind, that even though he has a good life with the Starks, this isn't his family, and his father would be disgusted to see that his son is taking orders from them, and even lying for them. And the last look on Theon's face may have been him starting to question his position with the Starks. And this episode also introduced us to Sam, and you can see that him and Jon are already starting to form a relationship between one another. Which is kind of nice because Jon's been kind of a loner for pretty much the whole show. Even though he had a good relationship with Robb and Arya and Bran, they really didn't show them hanging out together. But also, Littlefinger was showcased pretty nicely in this episode too. He had several scenes. And you can see that Littlefinger is going to be around for a while. And his network of spies may stretch farther than anyone can imagine. Littlefinger isn't just some sleazy brothel owner, but he is highly intelligent, who knows how to maneuver within the game, and have patience, and know when and where to use certain information to pull on the strings of anyone he wants, in order for something to work out in his favor. And Lady Catelyn has now taken her suspicions beyond the point of no return. Taking Tyrion as a prisoner will have extreme consequences that she may not be ready for, nor may she see coming. That's right, folks, we are in the great game now. And things are just getting started. So, comment below and tell me what you guys thought of this episode. Hopefully you guys are watching this video. It seems like my past few videos have been getting less and less views and more dislikes for some reason. So hopefully you guys like this video and want me to continue to do this series of recapping all the old episodes while we're waiting for Season 7. But anyways, comment below. Tell me what you guys thought of this episode. Tell me if there's any important things that I missed. And I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good day. Bye. Hey, how you doing today, folks? In today's video, I'm going to continue my recap of the Game of Thrones series. We are currently on Season 1, Episode 4, so let's get things started right away. Episode 4 starts us off in the middle of Bran having a dream. And in that dream, he is using his legs again and shooting his bow and arrow. And that's when the three-eyed raven gets his attention as he flies by and lands on the head of the direwolf statue. And Bran walks up to the three-eyed raven to basically check it out. And that's when Bran suddenly wakes up a little bit startled. Now I know if I lost the use of my legs, I'd probably be dreaming about using them again too. I feel bad for Bran. It'd be bad enough to lose the ability to walk, but to lose the ability to walk at such a young age would be even worse. Thornhill, who is there to take the black, and no one is impressed. And Thorne immediately puts him to work and tests his skills. And we quickly find out that Sam cannot fight. He may have never held a sword in his entire life by the looks of it. Sam gets his ass kicked pretty good here, and you can tell Jon doesn't like it. It's one thing to beat someone who isn't trained as well as the others, but it's just wrong to beat up a man who isn't even trying to defend himself. And this pisses John off, and John makes everybody stop. But it doesn't make Thorne too happy, so he tells John, all right, if you want to protect him, then go ahead and protect him. But I'm going to put everyone up against you to get through you to him. But of course, John kicks everyone's ass, which pisses Thorne off even more. We then cut across the sea to Dany and Jorah as they continue. To go pretty much your entire life handicapped would really suck. That's pretty unfortunate for Bran. And then Theon walks in and tells Bran that they have visitors, so he must get out of bed. Then we see Hodor, and this is the beginning of Hodor's job as being Bran's taxicab service. We then see that the visitor is actually Tyrion Lannister, fresh back from the wall. But Robb isn't too happy to see him. It's not like they were friends in the first place, but now that the Lannisters are under investigation by House Stark for paralyzing Bran, Tyrion isn't going to be getting any more warm welcomes by the Starks, even if he had nothing to do with it. Bran and Hodor then burst in, and even though Tyrion got word that Bran was awake, he is still a little bit surprised to see him awake and doing well. He asks Bran if he remembers anything from the fall, which Bran doesn't, but Tyrion is still very curious to find out what happened. Tyrion probably has some suspicions of his own. Tyrion then gives Bran a blueprint for making a saddle that would allow Bran to ride a horse, even with his disability. Robb is a little bit suspicious of this, and asks him if this is some kind of trick, because there's no way that a Lannister would go out of their way to do something nice for the Starks. Robb probably assumes that Tyrion is just a piece of shit like his brother Jaime. But Tyrion tells Robb that he has a soft spot for bastards, cripples, and broken things. And Bran gives Tyrion a little smile, and he gives him a little smile back. But Robb still isn't too impressed. But he still offers him a place to stay at Winterfell nonetheless. But Tyrion declines anyway. He knows Robb doesn't really mean it, so he would much rather stay in a brothel than at the Stark's castle. Especially when he knows he's not welcome there. So, as Tyrion goes to leave, him and Theon actually exchange a few words outside. Tyrion is wondering why Lady Catelyn wasn't there to greet him when he arrived at Winterfell, which Theon lies and says that she isn't feeling too well, that's why she wasn't here. But Tyrion knows she isn't there at all. So he then questions why Theon is so loyal to his captors, and he wonders what Theon's father, Balon Greyjoy, would think about his son now, if he could see him. Deep down, I think Tyrion might be thinking, the imp might be right. What the hell am I doing here? Then we go to Castle Black, where Jon is still taking on a bit of a leadership role and helping train the other men. Then walks in Samwell Tarly,